That should be the tagline for this episode.
What's wrong with people?
Mm.
And Jeff doesn't find out.
Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And before we start, a quick warning.
Warning.
This episode is going to have spoilers for the Grangegorman Murders from Mens Rea. We're going to discuss the whole story.
Episode? The whole story. If you haven't listened yet, look for the link in our show notes. All right. Before we jump in, let's just go through what the story is about. So this podcast was released in April 2018. And the host is Sinead McHugh. There's one episode. Well, there are many, many episodes. We are discussing one episode from April 2018, and it's just over an hour long. So not too much of a time commitment. Maybe some of a, I don't know. How do you say?
Emotional commitment?
Yeah, maybe an emotional commitment.
Some kind of commitment.
Yeah. Tell me now, Jeff. What am I on about? What's the story here?
Yeah. So this
starts with a sigh.
It's a story about, there's these three women, Mary, Sylvia, and Anne. They are living in an assisted living facility. It's kind of like a halfway house for former patients of a psychiatric hospital in Dublin. And this is one night in the late 90s. The two of the women, Mary and Sylvia, are pretty horrifically murdered in their home. And then we hear about the arrest of a lead suspect, a guy named Dean Lyons. And then we pivot to a couple more murders. And we think that maybe the police jumped to conclusions about Dean Lyons. And there's another guy, Mark Nash, who we basically come to confirm is the actual killer. Yeah, that's a super high level version of the story. There's a lot more to it. Dee, where do you want to start talking about this one?
Yeah. I think in our first episode, our Time Machine episode, I was saying how I figured you were going to like this because it felt to me like this Mens Rea podcast was very journalistic. I'm wondering, was I right?
No.
Oh.
No, I mean, we can talk about this as a podcast or we can just talk about the story. We're going to talk about both. We're going to do both those things. But
that's what we have done for the last 204 episodes, yeah.
I have paid attention to some of those episodes. What do you want to talk about the story? You want to talk about the podcast itself, the presentation?
It's just something I thought of. You asked me where I wanted to start, and I'm just saying, did you feel like it was like a journalistic style?
It was. I thought, this is one of those...
I right is what I'm asking.
Yeah, sort of. This was one of those podcasts where it's just one person basically reading a kind of prepared script. And I've liked that in the past. I didn't really like it here. I didn't like the presentation. I know that that's kind of what this podcast gets like a lot of acclaim for. It maybe, I don't know if it was this one episode. I felt like this was a very horrific story. This was, I feel like I've said this a lot before, but this is one of the most upsetting things we've listened to. And I thought this presentation didn't serve that well because it was a very kind of even-keeled, neutral presentation that didn't have a lot of emotion to it. And at times, I almost felt like it was hard to follow because the presentation was sort of so flat.
Oh, that's interesting.
What did you think?
I felt like the kind of the stark comparison to the horrendous, dramatic at times story, many times story, in comparison to that kind of more flat, even keeled, steady presentation of it worked well. I would have hated to listen to this story if it was dramatized or and then they went I wouldn't have been able to cope with it.
That's
and
fair.
So for me, I felt like that was a good balance, and that's what this story needed. I don't feel like, I felt like because even with Dean Lyons, like in a different, with a different podcast, I feel like there could have been more judgment in a way on him, or at least the portrayal of like judgment. I don't know. I just felt like
Yeah.
the evenness of it was needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think before we get to the story, I think one other thing kind of related, it's not really related, but I wanted to say this at the top because it's not serious and we're going to get to some serious stuff. I don't know if it's just that we've been doing this for 200 plus episodes and and then I've like known you now for so long and I've listened to you talk so much. That sounded meaner. I didn't
Me?
mean that to sound like
I
that.
don't talk that much. You gotta drag the conversation out of me most of the times, no?
I was about 30 seconds into this and I could have sworn that the host was American. And then I was
That's
like,
very
wait,
funny.
oh my gosh, she's Irish. And I just don't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just
is
that a little bit her?
Did she sound American? I don't think she had a
No.
very strong Irish accent.
No, but she was definitely not American.
No, she definitely was not American. No.
And there were some Irish phrases in here that I didn't know, or just like references that I didn't understand. So
did you write any down?
One was when she was talking about the house. At the beginning, she talked about how the back gate was kept closed by an old cooker.
Yeah. Do you know what a cooker is?
Is it some type of cooking device?
It's an oven, like a cooker.
So that would just be in the backyard. Is that like, I don't know if that's not like an Irish thing. Like, what are we talking about here? Why is there an old cooker keeping a back gate closed?
I mean, I presume they just didn't get rid of the cooker, so they're just kept in the garden.
Okay. Sure. The other thing, well, there was, it's funny, my autocorrect wrote guard, but it meant to, I presume, Gardy. Is that how you say it?
Gardy is like more than one. Garda as one.
Garda is one. Garda, recruit.
Yeah.
How there was a guy who was like, it was one of his first days on the job when he came to this crime scene.
Yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you would.
That's a lot.
Because, I mean, the medical examiner, like, basically said it was one of the worst things he'd ever seen.
Yeah, can I ask you about that? So I noted that too. That actually caught my ear the second time I listened. And yeah, I did listen twice because I was worried I'd missed some stuff. But yeah, he said it was one of the worst crime scenes he'd ever seen. How many times have we heard that? And I mean, and I don't mean to, I'm not.
I mean, usually if someone is murdered, the crime, like we're listening to the worst of the murders.
My point, like, okay. I don't want to diminish this crime. I'm more like it made me reflect on what's the like cumulative psychological toll on us as listeners of these kinds of stories that we keep hearing kind of horrific story after horrific. Like, is there a numbing effect
on us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, you know who you're talking to, you know when you're talking to them. Yeah, like, I mean, definitely. There is. And I think that's one of people's biggest issues with the true crime genre in general.
Right.
Is like,
sure,
you know, how it does that.
I will say we've listened to so many of these stories and there's still things that I have never heard before, like hemithorax. That was a word I wrote down that I don't think I'd ever heard before. Had you heard hemithorax before?
No.
Do you know what it means?
No. Thorax is like your neck, slicing your neck.
Well, it's the presence of fluid or air in one side of the thoracic cavity. So yeah, it's like your lungs. Yeah, it was one of the causes of death for one of the women at the beginning.
Did you notice, this is very random, but did you notice the state pathologist Professor Harbison was mentioned here. Did that ring any bells for you?
Mm-mm.
He's also involved in the Sophie Toussaint de Plantier
Oh
inquest.
yeah. Okay.
And then Dr. Marie Cassidy came in.
Well, that was the 90s, wasn't it? And this was the 90s.
That was
So
96 and this is 97.
oh yeah. So okay. So wait, and you said in when we were talking about this in the Time Machine episode that you hadn't heard of this case before, right? Okay. But it seems like this was, I mean, this case particularly with the Mark Nash bit carried on until for decades afterwards.
Yeah.
So this was never on your radar.
No, I'd never heard of him.
Okay. Were there any places or things mentioned in this podcast that were familiar to you? Like, do you know this part of Dublin? Do you know?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So Grangegorman, I think they alluded to this, that there's like a college. There's now a college there. It's like my brother-in-law went to college there. It's over, like it's very close to the city centre. All of the places mentioned, like Ireland's not that big. Like, you know, especially like Dublin's not that big. You know all the places around. And so it was all like very familiar to me. And I feel like often maybe that's the part, like when you say, oh, I found it hard to follow, probably didn't find it hard to follow for me because I wasn't focused on like the areas or like trying to make a map of that in my mind because that's already there, you know?
Yeah, I think that was, and it was particularly hard for me, I think, when the story pivoted to the second set of murders.
Going to Carlo.
Yeah, which I thought was, first of all, just kind of an abrupt pivot. And I think that's a curious thing about this style of storytelling.
That was pretty abrupt.
Yeah.
I was like, who's this new person we're talking about? Like, it felt very, like, it obviously made sense once everything like happened, but
that's the thing. Like, I feel like I described this in my notes as sort of like the Wikipedia style of telling a true crime story, because we started hearing about the first victims, and then we heard about the murder, and then we heard about the investigation and the arrest of Dean Lyons. And then we pivot to a next set of victims without any real sort of like preface or introduction. It's almost like we just like jump to another section of the Wikipedia page. Okay, now here's the story about these victims and how they were murdered. And then we hear about the person who murdered them. And then after all of that, it's like, oh yeah, and this guy also did this other murder that we had spent the first half an hour learning about. And yeah, by the end of it, it's like, okay, I see the connection. But I spent a long time being like, why are we hearing about these people? What does this have to do with anything? I thought Dean Lyons did this. That you just told me he confessed to this murder. Which is also, I feel like, when you're putting together a story, there's lots of ways to do it. But like, this has particularly hit me the second time I listened to it, because we're hearing about the police investigation, and we're hearing about the ways the police investigation.
Are you going to start speaking about your English degree soon? I feel like
I wasn't, but
speaking about your English degree.
But what it did was, the second time I listened to it, I was like, oh, like, okay, now I see all these seeds, all these bits of like, yeah, like there was disagreement amongst like the younger police and the older police, right? Like, and it was sort of like people pulling rank and saying like, well, like, we just want this case basically wrapped up. So, and there was allusions to like, maybe he didn't really do it, but he was coerced into this confession. But also we're being told his story, I think, through what he confessed to, that we later find out was sort of like a false or forced confession. So like, when you listen to it a second time, his story, like, how much of that is true? How much of that was like the police sort of putting it together, or making it fit their narrative? Like, it doesn't work, I think. Like, it doesn't hold together. That's part of
his story doesn't.
The podcast version of the story. Because and of course, the podcast couldn't have maybe started by talking about Mark Nash. It does this sort of misdirect of like, Dean Lyons is the guy. But like, let's go along with the police in finding Dean Lyons. But then the story we're told of Dean Lyons, March 1997, is potentially a made up story. Like, we find out later that his whole story was coerced. It is a made up story. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
coerced, or like, yeah, I think it was just, I think I'm having trouble understanding what part you're having trouble? Did you just feel like the construction of the story was like didn't flow and it was too choppy and it didn't make sense, especially on the second listen?
That's a shorter way of saying what I said, yeah.
Okay. So I would say, like, yes, but also I feel like I say this so often. That's probably like, that's more like akin to what it appears to have happened, like in real time, because there was this false, like kind of confession-y type thing going out amongst like different people that Dean Lyons had been in communication with. And then he had all these different stories. Apparently he was coming off heroin. He didn't have his methadone. So he
Right.
was like
Yeah.
kind of all over the place. So he's telling all these stories. He's probably heard like the Irish. I don't know if you know, like we don't keep things to ourselves. We're not quiet. So like he's probably heard around town about a few of the different like things that happened, and then he's like regurgitating it as if it's his, because he might have had, I don't know, some psychosis, something. So he's telling it, but it's all this scrappy confessions. Like the scrappy confessions is likely, or at least the way I felt, like akin to what actually happened at the time.
Yeah, no, I see that. No, that makes sense. I guess I just felt like it made the pivot to the Mark Nash story more abrupt.
I do agree that that was a bit too abrupt. Like it was like, wait a second, who are we talking about right now?
And you could have seeded that better by putting more doubt about the Dean Lyons story and then having some sort of like transition to the like meanwhile. But that wasn't there.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that part definitely could have been done better. That connection, that piece. It felt very much like two separate stories until like the jacket, which was like the thing that was kind of the thread.
But the other thing was that I didn't really like put together until the second time I listened to it was when we're still talking about Dean Lyons, there's the bit about where they like profile what they think the killer is. And they're like, well, we think this was someone who was like, you know, I don't know, 18 to 20 something, and maybe still lives with his parents and will definitely like is violent and will do this again, but like limited sexual experience, but then we don't quite get that explicitly connected to Mark Nash. Like Mark Nash has all that and we hear bits of those things, but not exactly. Like I kind of wanted to circle back to that and maybe like dissect more of what went right and what went wrong with the initial investigation. Because I mean, this is one of those stories where there was some real bad police work, right? Like, but some of it was presented as real good police work at the time. Or maybe it seemed that way at the time of like, hey, they solved this difficult crime that had some confusing clues, like the window, like broken, like glass on both sides of like inside and outside. And
that was wild, wasn't it? That they like spent time putting it all together.
That seemed fascinating. That seems so hard to do. Like, let's take shards of glass and reconstruct the window.
It also like feels, what's the right word? Is it feeble? Like that feels like a feeble attempt to do any sort of.
Yeah.
Is feeble the right word there? Like the chance that a piece of glass wasn't moved or whatever. Like I just don't know that I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
I feel like maybe, yeah, I think you're kind of convinced me here. I think like what I would like is someone to have spoken a little bit more, say about that. We haven't really heard about that before. Was that worth their time and energy?
Did it give them anything of use?
Did it give them anything? Could it have given them anything? What was the big question? In my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was like, was it pushed in or was it pushed out? Like that was the big question. So like, was this a good strategy to try and figure that out? Because it's an interesting one. Is it kind of a unique one? I don't think we've heard about it before. But I'm like, that doesn't mean it's good. Maybe people aren't doing this because it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, they have nothing else to do but let's reconstruct a window.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe what we haven't directly addressed is, and I know how I felt listening to both kind of sets of murders being described and how these aren't just murders. Like, I think these are murders that involve what I think are some of like your biggest fears in the world. These are women home alone or in vulnerable settings and horrifically assaulted and murdered and mutilated. And with the case of Anne, the one who survived in that first attempt, like hearing that, like he came into her room after murdering her 2 roommates and stood there for some amount of time. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, this, like, Dee is listening to her worst nightmare. And then we get to the second story with what's her name, Sarah Jane, and now we've got more women being attacked, this time with their small children present, right? And in one case, a little boy, I think, who is like 6 years old, who is witnessing it happen.
Yeah, that was.
And then she's fleeing to her neighbors while being pursued by this guy. And I think, like, is this not like the did you find a story that just brought together all of the things that, like, are most traumatizing and terrifying? Is that what you did?
I did it by accident. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know that that's what it was going to be. The crawl to the neighbor's house. That was like something straight from a horror film.
How did you handle this?
I was so conflicted as I was listening to it, because I was like, get back to the fucking kids, is what I was thinking.
She did leave her kids behind.
But she had to.
Yeah.
But, like, also, get back to the kids.
Well, and Anne left one of her roommates that she didn't know was already dead, but she found one of her roommates dead, and she fled the house because she thought the killer might still be in the house, but she didn't check on her other roommate, which I think, sure, like, she's trying to save herself at the moment, and she knows one of her roommates has been murdered. You can't, I think, judge people's decisions in these moments.
Oh, no. I was just saying I was conflicted, because as she was doing this, like, I had this vision of this, like, horror story happening, and I was just like, I was like, oh my God, get to the house, but also, like, what about your kids?
Well, and I guess, okay, and while we're talking about that story, the Mark Nash story, my other problem with this story, and maybe this just is what this story is, and we just don't know, but all we know of him is bad. We don't hear a single redeeming thing about him. But we also don't really know what caused him to snap that night, that second set of murders. We just know he suddenly started murdering people. And we don't ever really find out why he did it that first time.
No.
He is a mystery.
Yes.
And that's really hard, I think, to hear something so brutal and so awful and not have, like, even any, like, semblance of why. Like Mary and Sylvia were just strangers to him, right? As far as we know, like, he did not know them. He broke into their house and murdered them. But the second set, like, these were sort of family to him. Like, it was his girlfriend's family, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
So his girlfriend's family, so seemingly, like, more like familial-ish connections. And we hear about that evening, like, we hear about what preceded it, but it then just sort of, like, turns on a dime. And, like, what do you make of that? Like, what do you do with that?
I feel like what I'm hearing from you is you didn't like that this wasn't tied up on a bow. Like, there's no reason. There's no, like, tangible reason for this. And then I go back to, like, this is episode 205, Jeff. There's often no tangible reason. And that's the scary thing about it all, I think.
I don't know. These women were terrorized.
Yes.
And there's so many things we don't. And there's some things that we could know. Like, we don't know what happened to Anne after this. This was 30 years ago.
We don't. I had a question over that as well. Because it can't be good.
Where'd she go? Like, when we heard the little bit about these women before, like, these women, again, they were in a like a halfway house of sorts after being in this psychiatric hospital. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we heard like why they were there. And yeah, I mean, they needed to be in like an assisted living facility, right? Like they needed that sort of care and attention. I'm really curious what happened to Anne after this. I'm curious what happened to Sarah Jane after this.
Yeah.
I
We don't hear that.
we don't. I mean, Anne wasn't like the two women who were murdered were 61 and 59, but Anne I think was like 40 in her 40s. She was younger. She was much younger.
I don't
And
know.
and this is also a 1-episode story, so maybe this is the type of thing that if this was a 5-episode series, we'd get more of that.
It would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? Because like, I feel like having listened to 1 hour of this, I'm like, I can't believe you listened to it twice. But then if it was done over a few episodes, I feel like it would have been, the awfulness would have been nearly diluted by, some other stuff.
Yes, I just realized I listened to it the second time very sped up, and I forgot to turn my speed back down. Podcast. I was like, why are my other podcasts going so fast while I was cooking dinner? I couldn't listen to it. This at 1 speed. This was 1.4 the second time.
Oh my God. Is that like really fast for you? 2 is like my limit.
I've done 2 for some of the series that I listen. I used to listen to everything we talked about twice. I can't believe I did that. Where was the time? Where did I find the time?
I don't know. Honestly.
I don't know either. It doesn't seem like it exists anymore. One other thing I wanted to mention. So I mentioned about Mark Nash something. So I did read a little bit more, just trying to find out a little bit more information. I didn't go very far with this, but there was an interesting note in an article I read that the jury in that trial was excused from jury service for life after having to kind of sit through this trial and hear about these crimes. Which maybe that's a thing that happens. I don't know how often that happens. Maybe that's not uncommon, but I don't remember hearing about that before. Have you?
No.
It makes sense. Like it seems like, okay, yeah, like they've been through something. Give them a pass. Yeah,
it was tough. It was tough. Listen, I'm sorry. I think I should be banned from picking episodes of future. To be fair, like when I was looking, I said this to you before, Reddit told me that it was a great episode.
I would give this podcast another chance. I think it was well researched. And I do think this is potentially just one of those stories that I don't know how I would tell this story. I don't like if I was doing this, like you said, like she sort of just followed the sequence of events and followed the investigation. Maybe that is the best way to do it. But
did you just convince yourself that you were wrong?
No, I'm just trying to give her the benefit of the doubt and be open to new experiences in the future. But in this moment, this particular episode, this is not my favorite. And I guess what I was trying to say before, and I didn't really I didn't finish my thought, was some of these things that I'm being critical of are nitpicky and small. But I think when they're set against the backdrop of a story, this sort of challenging and traumatic and triggering for a lot of people in a lot of ways. Like I think like your emotions are heightened because of what you're hearing described, right? Like if this was a story, like, some of the ones we've done that have been sort of more lightweight crimes, not even involving murder, right? But like when you get to not just murder, but like the nature of these murders, I feel like the stakes are so much higher. You sort of like need so much more from the presentation that, and maybe to your point about like she was balancing out the horrors with her sort of even tone. Yeah, I think there's truth to that. There's fairness to that. And I wouldn't have wanted to hear this as the sort of like expert talking and then the sort of like color commentary of person be like, oh wow, that does sound horrific. Like that wouldn't have worked for this story. I think like I'm thinking about other podcasts we've listened to, and I feel like there's some that are in the similar style of single voice presenting, but just have a little bit more sort of reflection, or a little bit of editorializing to kind of bring context and perspective, or comparison to other stories that wasn't really here. In addition to sort of tying some of these loose ends together of like what happened to these people, why, like more of what happened next, or what else we might have gotten about the why. I'm always going to want more why. I know you. I hear you. I can see the face you're making. I always am going to want more why.
I know. It's an interesting want when it's just so unlikely.
I want the world to make sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
I want it to make sense.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because the books I read are the opposite
Don't
of
make
that.
any sense.
Yeah, like I'm angry at books that tie everything up. Like I like those kind of like
So
snobby
in fiction,
literary fiction.
You want, yeah, okay,
I'll
not in real.
I'll
life.
admit what it is. It's snobby literary fiction that doesn't have clean answers or like resolution at the end. I like that in a fiction book. In a true story, I wanna better understand the world. And I think this made me more like be like, what's wrong with people? And I didn't find out.
Yeah. I mean, that should be the tagline for this episode.
What's wrong with people?
Mm.
And Jeff doesn't find out.
What's the rhetorical question?
What do you, okay, we've talked about it now. Oh, we didn't do it at the beginning, but we do it now. Where do you sit on this?
I wouldn't be running back to this podcast in general. I mean, I would never listen to that episode again. As you said, it's all my worst nightmares.
It's really like if I were to write a story of like, let me put together all the things that T like loses sleep over. This is that story.
Yep.
Yeah. This is 100%.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't listen to it again. But I'd never heard of the Grangegorman Murders. I'd never heard of Mark Nash. And, you know, as we say, it's important to speak about all of the victims in this case. You know, hearing about Mary Callanan and Sylvia Shields, Catherine Doyle and Carl Doyle, like, it's important that they're remembered, you know, and Anne Murnagh and Sarah Jane Wilsden. That's part and parcel of why we do this, is to not focus on the killers. And Dean Lyons, I mean, what a vulnerable young man, and like all the families impacted by this, you know, it's just the kids, like there's no winners, but it's important like to not run away from those stories as well. Thank you all for joining today's episode. Just a note that we are going to take our first ever just for a couple of weeks. We'll be back towards the end of the summer to bring you more episodes, more stories, more true crime recaps.
And can I just say, if you're missing us while we're away, this is canonically episode 205, but in real world terms, this is episode like 223. So
Whoa.
I recommend going back, starting from the beginning, or wherever you choose, and listen again. I listen to so many of the podcasts that we talk about multiple times. If you haven't done that for this show, think about how rewarding that might be. Maybe it's not rewarding at all, and maybe it's a waste of your time, but know that those are all there available for you on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening. And we hope you enjoy going back through our catalog.
If you're not sure where to start, leave us a comment on Instagram or Spotify, and we'll get back to you, and we'll give you some advice. Tell us what you like, and we'll let you know where you might dive in. Thanks so much as always for listening. We will chat to you in a few weeks.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.